all over the South. You had sit-ins, Texas, Florida, all over, except Mississippi. That's a note, Mississippi. Well, I was there after the bus was burned in Anniston, Alabama, and joined the Freedom Ride to continue that Freedom Ride. And we did that. That's another story. And my first knowledge of Selma, I never heard of Selma, was when we were on the Freedom Rides. We were coming from Birmingham to Montgomery. And after we got beaten up and the bus was burned in Anniston, Alabama, then we rendezvoused in Birmingham, where the bus was also stopped. We were headed on into Montgomery, but our route was coming through Selma. That's the first I heard of Selma. We had to bypass Selma because there was a mob of 2,000 people waiting at the bus station. So they sent a decoy to throw people off. We had the state troopers, we had the federal government, everybody was protecting us coming down. Because Patterson, who was the governor, said he wasn't going to give protection. But, they still tried to, do something to show, after Anniston. Well, after the Freedom Rides was over and that kind of thing, and we decided that as students we were going to drop out of school for 2 years, out of college, so we could focus on, civil rights and desegregation issues. So we joined SNCC. We formed SNCC in 1960, and I was one of those students who dropped out after the Freedom Rides. We said, let's go do this thing. So it was in 1962, it was in Atlanta, and I wanted to be director of a project. And they told me that they could, consider that, and that they'd save a place for me if I would go and help raise funds to get somebody out of jail in Louisiana. And we had about 3 of them in jail, $30,000, $10,000 each. In those days, that was a lot of money. Cash bond.
Absolutely.
So I went to Chicago and went up to St. Louis and all those places, Detroit, to raise the money. We raised it. So we had to go to New York, someplace people are there. So when I returned to Atlanta, waiting for my directorship, they said they didn't have any more. They said you could be an assistant director. Go to Mississippi with Bob Moses, over to Southwest Georgia with Charles Sherrod, or over to Arkansas with Bill Hanson. Now, Selma, Alabama had been one of the places designated by the Southern Regional Council. They had funds from the Field Foundation and some other places to fund voter registration. So the Justice Department had filed suits against these rural counties where you had predominantly black folks because they had such a poor turnout, and there was so much intimidation and that kind of thing, and reprisal, until black folks were very slow to even try to attempt to vote. Okay, but we needed people to go and attempt to vote to show that they were being denied. Because if you didn't go and try to vote, how can you say that they were being denied? Okay, so part of that whole thrust was to getting people to go in order to bring about a suit from the Justice Department. That was sort of the main reason. So then we can open things up. So anyway, I got there and they told me there was no place left. And I said, no, that was not my understanding. So I began to start a debate. They said, well, look, we already sent 2 teams of SNCC folks to Selma. And the 2 teams came back and said that we're not going to be able to accomplish anything there because the black folks are too afraid and the white folks are just too mean. So, what, but if you want to go down there and take a look at it and see what you think. This was in the fall of '62. I said, well, yeah, I'll go. So instead, I came directly to Tuskegee, and I spent an entire week in the library over there studying Selma, Alabama, in Dallas County. I wanted to know why was it that black folks were so scared in Selma, Alabama. We had Montgomery. We had Birmingham already, you know. That was going on in 62. It finally culminated, you know, in 63 with all that stuff. But the stuff and action was going on in 62. They were demonstrating, you know, everything. So, while I was there, I met Mrs. Lois Reeves. And I'm saying this because I know this is an important part of history. She was over the Y on the campus. And her husband pastored the Presbyterian Church. In Tuskegee. She had a daughter named Cookie. She was the one that took me in. Now, I always stayed with older women when I went on these trips and stuff like that, because I know I'd get me a good meal. And I didn't mind washing dishes, you know.
All right,
and
man.
emptying trash and raking the yard and sweeping.
You were really smart.
I'd even sweep the yard. You know how we used to sweep the yard? I'd even sweep the yard.
You know about it.
Okay, and you already had a telephone there. Okay, so you didn't have to go set up a house. So I never stayed in the Freedom House. I knew where the Freedom House was. So that's, when we went on into Selma, Alabama, Mrs. Boynton was my Freedom House. That's where I stayed initially. And it was because of Miss Boynton and Miss Marie Foster that I made up my mind that this is where I was going to cast my lot. And they're the ones that convinced me that there was hope in Selma. Now, I'll be honest with you, everything those folks said about Selma was true. Okay, they got their